17 minutes past 7. So efforts to clean up England's rivers, lakes and seas have been called poor by a key watchdog.
The Office for Environmental Protection, which is a statutory public body, says government targets to improve water quality will be missed by a large margin. Here's more from our environment correspondent, Jonah Fisher.
The government has, through the Water Framework Directive, committed itself to improving the health of England's damaged rivers, lakes and coastal waters. At the moment, only 16% of them have a good ecological status, and the target for 2027 of 77% looks a long way away. So what's going on? The Office for Environmental Protection, the official watchdog, has been taking a closer look and has delivered a scathing verdict on the government's efforts to improve water quality.
We found the legal framework to be basically sound, thankfully, but it's the way that it's being interpreted and implemented that is the issue. It is really being done poorly. And that means that government is very unlikely to achieve its ambitions for our waters. In fact, it's very likely to miss by a large margin the targets it set for the quality of waters, which were to be met by 2027. So there's some really serious issues here.
The OEP says the government's plans lack detail, commitment and adequate funding, and that plans for polluted river basins are too generic.
What we've seen over the last 25 years since the Water Framework Directive was launched is that our rivers have really flatlined. We haven't made any strategic improvement to the condition of our rivers, despite lots of new initiatives and small packages of funding. What we need to do is to take a much more fundamental approach and really change course if we want to deliver the kind of improvements that's going to give us resilience to climate change and restore biodiversity to our precious rivers and lakes.
A government spokesperson said this government has done more than any other to protect and restore our rivers, lakes and coastal waters with record levels of investment, monitoring and enforcement. Jonah Fisher, BBC News.
So let's speak to Charles Watson, who's from River Action UK. Charles Watson, very good morning to you. And I guess in a way, on that beautiful, you're by the Thames, obviously, it sort of illustrates in a way, we have this report which is saying the problems, and then we see that image behind you, one of, the River Thames and the problems they have there. Why it's so important that we get these protections right?
Well, it is a beautiful day here on the Thames, but if you went for a swim in this iconic river behind me, you'd be doing it at your peril. Now, we've been testing just a few miles upstream now for the last 3 weeks, and E. coli levels, which is a deadly pathogen, are running at about 10 times the levels they should be. So what we saw last weekend, we saw a historic swimming race up in Henley being cancelled. Rowing activities on the Thames have been shut down in many places. I mean, it is literally a human hazard to get in the river, and that is just unacceptable.
Well, I suppose in some sense, Mr. Watson, what you're saying, it's good that we know more about the conditions of our rivers. It sets up problems. Now, I'm looking at this report. These names won't mean much to a lot of people. The Office for Environmental Protection, who've done this report, they say that laws are not being effectively implemented unless things change. Most rivers, lakes and coastal waters are likely to remain in a poor state in the years ahead. That is an alarming warning sign, isn't it, about what is currently happening and how it's likely to end up?
Yeah, well, it's a devastating vote of no confidence in the government's plans. I mean, we've just heard a statement from the government saying that they've done more than anybody to clean up this rivers. It is simply not true. I mean, if you read this report, I mean, point after point highlights how plans are not in place, how there is no effective timescale or credible timeline to implement these measures. But most importantly, the single biggest takeout I see in this report is that we are just not funding environmental protection. There needs to be a huge allocation of cash to clean up the rivers. We cannot just keep cutting back on environmental protection, cutting the budgets of environmental protection agencies and allowing this state to continue. It is a disgrace. We are the dirty man of Europe.
Charles, good morning to you. It's Naga here. We did ask the government to give us a statement. It said this government, and I'm picking up on what you said about it not being true, what it said is this government has done more than any other to protect and restore our rivers, lakes and coastal waters with record levels of investment, monitoring and enforcement. We welcome this report's recommendations to go further and will consider them in detail. Charles, you say you need cash injection. Have you got a figure? Because when I hear that E. coli levels are, 10 times what they should be in the Thames, right? And we've got years, this report saying, of dirty rivers. That's going to take a lot of money. What is the figure? What does the government need to commit to clean up our waterways?
Well, so we have bodies like the Environment Agency. In England, the Environment Agency is the body charged and responsible to protect the environment. Now, the EA's budget, since over the last 15 years, we believe that for environmental protection has been cut to the tune of something like, after inflation, 75%. Now, that means that monitoring of rivers has been scaled right back. That means inspections of polluters, actually going out, boots on the ground, to check up on the water companies, to check up on also agriculture, which is a huge polluter of our rivers, has been cut back. And also, most importantly, enforcement has been cut back. So this is going after people, prosecuting them, putting in place real deterrents. So it is pollution does not pay. Now, this is not a huge expense. If you compare the amount of money as a country we have spent on, fighting pandemics or saving the banking system, or you name it, we're talking actually about relatively speaking. This is not a huge amount of money, but these budgets have just been slashed and cut. And it's unacceptable.
Well, the Environment Agency says it's directed more than £14 billion of investment from the water industry alone for improvement. So I'm just trying to get an idea of the cost. And you talk about the pandemic, you talk about banking, the banking system. These are things that affected the economy. Of course, this is about our health and treasuring our environment. How much?
But this is also the economy. I mean, if we do not have clean waters, the cost to everything. I mean, fresh water is the source of nature. It is the source of so many things, and we cannot put a price on it. But if you look at the report, there are specific recommendations, but it does require significant commitment. We cannot do this on the cheap, and as a starting point, we must refund our environmental protection agencies. So they can do their job and hold polluters to account.
Charles Watson, founder and chairman of River Action UK, thank you for your time with us here on Breakfast.